It's another edition of WRAL Triangle and Two. I'm Mark Bergin. He's Luis Fernandez, and it is a loaded podcast today. We're going to start with the news that the NC State Wolfpack have a new starting quarterback, MJ Morris, taking over for Brennan Armstrong. Luis, what do the fans need to know about this decision by Dave Doeren?
Well, I mean, in his press conference today, the word that Dave Doeren kept using over and over again when describing the change at quarterback was spark. Kept saying the offense needed a spark, and the hope is that MJ Morris can provide that. And Mark, I don't think it's fair to say the entire reason why NC State's offense has been bad to average at best so far this season is because Brennan Armstrong has played horribly. I don't think he is the only reason why, but he is the easiest. It's the easiest change that you can make to the offense right now to hopefully spark a change. That's how I would put it.
And I think it makes sense to do this move now going into the Marshall game because I look at NC State's schedule. Marshall, an opponent you're going to be favored over this upcoming weekend. And then you play at Duke the following week on October the 14th. Duke with a bye week. We'll talk a bit more about Riley Leonard later in the show, Luis. But Duke has played very, very good football. And so you don't want to throw a young quarterback right from the frying pan right directly into the fire.
Yes, although I will say as I pull up the line here, like Marshall is a 6.5 point underdog right now, according to DraftKings against NC State. Marshall's a very good football team. Like that's another thing that Doeren mentioned in his press conference today. They are 4-0. They have a very good defense. Just like looking at the pure statistical numbers of what Marshall does, they have 17 sacks so far this season, just compared to giving up 2 sacks. They have 31 tackles for loss. They have 5 interceptions. They've got 12 pass breakups. They're at 41 quarterback hurries. Like they are top 30, I believe, in havoc plays. And for those of you out there who do not necessarily know what a havoc play is, it's considered a pass broken up, a tackle for loss, a sack. So Marshall's defense is good. So I don't think there was really a good time to make this adjustment. Right, because like Louisville was this high-flying offense who you kind of expected NC State would need to score a lot of points to be able to compete against with, but the defense absolutely carried. The Virginia game maybe the week before, but you're not going to not start Brennan Armstrong against Virginia in that situation. It's just that's what's so tough about this, Mark, is MJ Morris is not going to be put in a good position to succeed immediately because there's so much that has to be adjusted for with this offense. It's going to be tough. I think it's the right move, but it's still a really tough position for both him and NC State.
You were planning to redshirt MJ Morris this season, Luis. And the reason why I say it's the right timing if you are going to make this decision is you play at home at Carter Finley Stadium this upcoming weekend. And then you've got Duke in Durham on the road on October the 14th. You have a bye week. Oh, and then you get to host Clemson on October the 28th on Halloween weekend. So to me, the timing actually does make sense. We cut our teeth in Knoxville, Tennessee, Luis, covering the University of Tennessee. It reminds me a little bit of back in the day when the University of Tennessee's offense needed a jolt and they turned to a young Josh Dobbs. However, MJ Morris is a little bit of a different style of quarterback. Dobbs, a dual threat quarterback, along with Brennan Armstrong, the guy he's replacing.
Yeah, MJ can run the ball if he needs to, but if you go back to the sample size of what we had last year, right? In 5 games, he had 1 pass against Syracuse, so take that one, push it out there. Charleston Southern, remove that one. So let's say 3, right? The 3 that he started. He had 13 carries against Virginia Tech, 19 against Wake Forest, 13 carries against BC, never got over 50 yards. Was averaging about 1 to 2 yards per carry. So, I mean, he had a couple of longer runs in there, 17 yards, 10 yards. So some of that is like sacks and things like that. But, MJ Morris is what he's going to do well is pass from the pocket. You go back and watch some of the highlights that he had. And when he was playing really well, he looked very good last year, where you were really excited for what he could bring to the table. Then he hurts his ankle. That kind of throws things off a little bit. So, I don't know. What are your initial thoughts, Mark, on what MJ is going to be able to do for NC State?
Again, you look at the sample size of what we have, Luis, and you have to improve upon an offense that ranks 77th in the country in total offense. And Friday night's game against Louisville, when you can only muster 10 points, you had a 10-0 lead going into halftime. You end up losing 13-10. Point blank period. That's not going to get it done. And the modern and how football's modern play. Take out the VMI game where the Wolfpack score 45 points and you're capped off at 24 points scored. How college football is played now, you can't just rely on a good running game and a stout defense. And oh, by the way, your starting running back, Jordan Houston, he's no longer a member of the team either.
Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see what Robert and I and NC State do in terms of running moving forward. They struggled again in like short yardage situations last week against Louisville, but they've been pretty solid at that overall this year. But Brennan Armstrong's been their leading rusher. He's been running the ball a lot. So is MJ Morris going to continue to do that? Are they going to mix up how they handle all that? That's what I'll be curious to see, just kind of how all of that plays out. And the rest of the offense too. I mean, there were a few times where they were in like 3rd and long because of penalties, holding and things like that. They struggled with blitz pickup is one thing I noticed as well, looking back at the tape. And just in general, there were times where Brennan Armstrong was, had pressure in his face immediately. But I think that those are things that you can clean up mid-season. It's just going to be about trying to get better and build around MJ Morris now. And I think too, not to go on like a little rant here, but I think one of the things that was really frustrating watching Brennan Armstrong play, obviously the turnovers were bad. Like, I mean, the first interception that he throws in the end zone, the ball just sails on him on an open route. The ball just sails on him. The last interception, he just kind of flings it up there, trying to make something happen on first down. Take the sack, throw it completely out of bounds, live to see the next down. So MJ Morris, just if he can be a better decision maker, and if he can take some of those go balls that have been falling out of bounds and keep them inbounds and allow the receivers to make a play on them. We saw some playmaking happening with receivers in the game against Louisville. KC Concepcion has shown that he can do that. Obviously, Terrell Timmons had a couple of big plays downfield. NC State can do it. There's just a lot of little things that have to be fixed.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lewis. But I look at, okay, Marshall at home, you're going to be favored. But then the following week, Duke on the road. Duke has its bye week right now. And we'll talk about Riley Leonard's injury here in just a second. But to me, again, the timing actually makes sense because you've got a home game against an opponent that you should take care of business against. So we'll see how MJ Morris and the Wolfpack fare now that there's a changing of the guard at the quarterback position.
Yes, I agree that this is probably the best time in your current schedule to make this change, but still, it is going to be very hard for the Wolfpack moving forward. Like, you're trying to work it all out against a very good Marshall team. You've got Duke on the road. We've seen how good Duke is. Even if Riley Leonard isn't playing, that defense is going to be very good. Clemson, at least that one's at home, but still. Miami, who's number 17 in the country right now, at Wake Forest, who is a solid team, even though they did lose to Georgia Tech, who lost to Bowling Green, which don't even get me started on that. And then the end. It's
a gauntlet. It's a gauntlet.
It is. It is a tough position for NC State to be in. And if they don't get their offense fixed, their defense has been phenomenal, truly phenomenal. But if they don't get their offense fixed at least a little bit, I just don't see a whole lot of wins there at the end of the schedule. I don't.
All right. Speaking of offense and quarterbacks, some good news in Durham coming out of the Duke Notre Dame football game. Riley Leonard's injury, not as bad as initially expected, Lewis. And I don't even know where to start with this because I have a lot of thoughts following Saturday's game against Notre Dame. I thought Duke should have won the game, if I'm just being very honest with you.
I mean, they had plenty of opportunities to. If their offense was able to capitalize a little bit. I mean, that's Notre Dame. That's like they are number 11, now number 10. Their defense, really held tight against Ohio State. Like, that's a very good Notre Dame defense. But I mean, they were right there. Duke was. That, to me, that Riley Leonard injury was just so deflating. Because, I mean, I don't think Duke's at a point where they want moral victories anymore, right? And so, like,
agreed.
If you were to consider moral victories, I would say that would be considered a moral victory. I don't look at it like that, but that's just so deflating for I believe high ankle sprain is what it's kind of being reported as right now. Duke is off this week, so they won't play until the following week against NC State. So we don't hear from Mike Elko or any of the players this week. So we won't have an update from him, directly, at least for a little bit. But that's tough, man. They were right there. They were right there, and it doesn't get any easier. You got NC State, Florida State as well, UNC. Duke's got a hard schedule, and you need Riley Leonard back as soon as possible.
I'm with you there, week to week. And Lewis, everyone's going to point to the 4th and 16, the Sam Hartman scramble, and then Notre Dame rips off a touchdown with their running back the play after to take the lead for good. On that final drive, Duke blitzed Notre Dame quite a bit, and there's a lot to be made of. Should Duke have blitzed yet again on the 4th and 16 not to give Hartman more time? A lot of people point to that play. It was the play before that I actually thought had a huge outcome on the game. The Duke defensive back tries to make a diving interception. It's not for a lack of effort, but if Duke gets that interception, they get the ball and win the game, and Riley Leonard's not hurt. Again, so it's not for a lack of effort. But the reason I bring this up is the week before, the same thing happened to Notre Dame against Ohio State. Notre Dame had a defensive back who had a ball go right through his hands. Ohio State goes down and scores the game-winning score, and they end up losing. So if you want to be an elite program, you can't give a good team another opportunity to win the game when the ball goes through your hands. Again, it's not for a lack of effort, but if Duke turns the ball over there, they win. And we're not talking about a Riley Leonard injury here on today's podcast.
It's funny that you mention, like, kind of because of X, this ends up happening, because I feel that way just about a lot of times in football. We're like, oh man, if this turnover doesn't happen, then this player doesn't tear their ACL a couple of plays later. That's football is it's a dangerous sport. It is high contact, and so you want to limit those possibilities of people getting hurt as much as possible. It's interesting that you bring that up. It would have been a hard interception to make.
Definitely,
it definitely would have been. And to me, I've been trying to look for the all 22 of that 4th and 16 play. If someone has that somewhere out there, please send it to me, because my assumption would be is that Duke was playing in man, and just essentially. When you're playing man, especially in that kind of situation, you will lose count of the quarterback because there's no one really spying him. So Sam Hartman can run, but for him to pick up that, was it 16 yards, 4th and 16? It was ridiculous. Like, that was such a good play. So I don't know. I feel bad for Duke because it's, you when you're competing with, when you have that opportunity to make such a huge play for your program in general and to get such a big win, obviously that would be amazing. But I think at this point, it's like, let's hope that Riley Leonard feels okay, because the offense is different without him. Although they do have some talented backups as well.
Duke could have lived up to its name as the serial killers, because you knock off the Clemson Tigers and Tony the Tiger and then the Lucky Charms that are Notre Dame. If Notre Dame's a 2-loss school, they are effectively eliminated from the college football playoff. And that very nearly happened this weekend in Durham. And you could point to the missed field goals, but again, people want to point to the 4th and 16 and the decision to only rush 3 defenders and drop 8 into coverage. We could debate that and discuss that and question Mike Elko about that. But for me, the 3rd and 16 play, when you have an opportunity to put the giant and the Goliath that is Notre Dame away, you have to take advantage of those opportunities. You feel for the kid, though, too, because it's not for a lack of effort, Lewis.
Exactly. And now Henry Bellin, I believe is how you say his last name. I may not be saying that right. But he would be next up for quarterback wise for Duke, redshirt freshman out of New York. What's interesting is earlier this season, Mike Elko had said it's important Duke has won, I believe it's every single game before this Notre Dame game by 20 or more points. And there was a lot of opportunities for some of the second string people to get in and get reps. And he said, hey, that's important because you never know, we may have to win games in the future without Riley. And that's exactly what happened, essentially. He came in against Lafayette, 8 of 8 for 118 yards and a touchdown. And he also had a rushing touchdown as well. So, Riley Leonard is one of those players that is one of one. But this could be an opportunity for Duke to get a look at what the future is going to be like once Riley Leonard leaves. So he needs to do enough to allow the defense to do what it's been doing, allow the running game to do what it's been doing, and keep Duke in a position where they can still compete for an ACC championship.
Good insight there, Lewis. And again, Duke on a bye week, play NC State. Duke hasn't beaten NC State since the 2013 season. So
Really?
changing of the guard a little bit, maybe in the triangle. So we'll
That's
see.
wild.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It's been a long, long time. And let's get to the final triangle team. Some news out of North Carolina today, Lewis. Mack Brown talks with reporters and mentions the possibility of Tez Walker playing in the postseason. So after finals are over, which the dates are December the 8th and December through the December 15th, Tez Walker could play, at least according to Mack Brown talking today. The question I have would be, depending on what bowl game UNC would get into, he wouldn't be eligible to play in the ACC championship game just because that happens before finals. But unless North Carolina's playing in like the college football playoff, we don't know if Drake May is going to play in the bowl game too. It's like, what incentive would he have to play in a postseason game? But get into a college football playoff, like I'm watching it. It's just like, for as much attention and notoriety that this got with the NCAA's decision to say he is not eligible, it was an eye-opening, it was something I was surprised to learn about and to hear Mack Brown discuss during his news conference today.
Yeah, so I think it was a recent NCAA change, and I believe it happened at, I want to say, the end of last week when all this went down, because there are a lot of these situations where players are ineligible because of that two-time transfer rule, just around the country in general, right? I almost view this as like, this is cool, but there's, in my mind at least, listen, there's I only got so much bandwidth going on. This is one of those things where I'm like, UNC will worry about it when they get there. Because yeah, I mean, if like there's this world where UNC is, 13-0 and is in the college football playoff because they just won the ACC championship, and now you can add Tez Walker to the mix for the playoffs, I mean, that'd be amazing. But like, UNC is 4-0, and there are a lot of games against a lot of good teams remaining. So I the one point that you bring up there about like, hey, we don't even know if Drake May is going to be playing in the bowl game. Yeah, I mean, you don't know what that situation is going to be like. Would it be really cool? Would it be the cherry on top of what's been a very bad story? What's been very frustrating and disappointing for Tez Walker, his family, UNC, college football? Sure, it would be awesome, but like, I'm just not even going to let that cross my mind until you get to at least December. That's where I'm at when it comes to this. Even Mack Brown said, he's like, listen, I believe that we still have a lot of people who can, like, who are in Tez's corner, who are working with Tez to try and see what the next steps are, all of that stuff. He's like, but in some ways, he's like, I've had to turn the page and focus on being a football coach right now, because that's just what the season is like. So, yeah, I'll worry about it when we get to December.
Yeah, if I had to put like a percentage chance that he plays in the postseason for UNC this season, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'd say the chances are slim. But then the question I have too would be like, okay, I asked what's the incentive if Walker were to play in a postseason game to where he could potentially get hurt? I mean, you can get hurt at any point, but then the next question I have is like, will it really influence how scouts view him as a player? And yes, your tape is your resume as a player, and he has that from his Kent State playing days. But again, it goes back to where it's like, what's the upside for him decided to suit up if it gets to that point, which again, we don't know if it will.
If Drake May is playing and Tez Walker plays in a big enough profile bowl game, I think it could definitely help his stock. But there are way too many ifs that have to be answered, too many roads that have to be crossed. Too many Rubicons that have to be ventured over until you get to that moment. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, we'll see what happens. UNC's got to worry about facing a Syracuse team that just lost to Clemson this weekend first, before any of that happens.
I like this, Lewis. George Pettaway for the Tar Heels is going to redshirt as well. Plans to, unless there's major injuries at the running back position too. So it's news coming out of the bye week for North Carolina. Now, he could also play in the bowl game too and not have that impact his redshirt status. So we'll see how UNC looks coming out of the bye, going up against Dino Babers and a Syracuse team that, like you said, Lewis, coming off a loss to Clemson. So final topic, though. Carolina Panthers have now lost 4 straight games. And Bryce Young, to me, Lewis, the play that really swung the outcome of the game, Panthers have the ball with the lead. Strip sack, fumble, recovery, touchdown for the Minnesota Vikings. And like, other than the pick six, the interception that set up a field goal, it's like, how is this offense moving with Bryce Young, Frank Wright and company? It's really not. I honestly, would you almost have milked the quote unquote ankle injury for a little bit longer to see, hey, Bryce, learn a little bit longer under Andy Dalton? I know Andy Dalton threw for almost 60 times when he was filling in the Seattle game in week 3, but it's a tough spot for the Panthers to be in. And Bryce Young has just really struggled when he's been on the field in regular season action for the Panthers. But it's almost like with NC State, it's like, is it all Bryce Young's fault? The answer is probably not.
It's not. And no, I'm trying to approach this gently. Like, wins and losses do not matter for the Carolina Panthers this year. They don't, right? I mean, they don't have a first round pick, so it doesn't really matter what's going on there. The whole point of this season is to find out, hey, do we feel good about Bryce Young being the guy? And, can the Panthers continue to grow before they kind of start to make some moves, whether that be getting more weapons, whatever it might be, right? I mean, offensively, I just have a lot of concerns with what they're doing. Like, if I pull up Bryce Young's just next gen passing chart from this week 4 game, and so essentially it's got all the completions, incompletions, like, mapped out there, right?
Where he's distributing the football.
Yeah. He's throwing over the middle, which that is good, because when you have a short quarterback, my biggest concern is they're just not going to throw over the middle. And so he was able to throw over the middle, and he had some good passes over the middle. He hitting people in stride on some 3rd and longs. There were some good passes over the middle. There's this big old cluster of passes behind the line of scrimmage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 passes all completed behind the line of scrimmage, all in like this cluster in this exact same spot. So screens, check downs, little things like that. And there are so many of his passes that are at the line of scrimmage or behind it. There is not a single pass past 20 yards downfield.
Yeah.
I think the longest pass he threw in the entire game was 19 yards.
But he's got to protect the football too and understand the down distance and situation of the game too, Lewis. And I hear what you're saying too, because you have to take the training wheels off in the sense that not all interceptions and turnovers are created equally. If you throw it down the field trying to connect with Adam Thielen or Mingo, whatever receiver it may be, if it's a turnover and interception, okay. If it's 40 or 50 yards down the field, it's an arm punt.
I would like to, and this is one of those things where it's like, it's hard to tell because you're not in the room. You don't have the playbook in front of you. But they also were struggling a lot with blitz pickup. The play that you mentioned, right? That strip sack recovered for a fumble. It's a late rotation down at the line of scrimmage. And if you just look at the numbers of people that are going, you could see there's going to be a free rusher. And so Bryce has to be able to recognize that and either call out some kind of hot route or adjust the protection or whatever he needs to do. Because part of the reason why that strip sack even happens is he gets the ball and starts to go to his right, try and make a play around the guy. It's like you almost have to like look and think, I need to go to the left immediately in this kind of situation. So you have situations like that where I put that on Bryce Young's lack of just reps. And then it was, I think, 2nd and goal when the Panthers were trying to score a touchdown to take the lead or tie the game. I forget what it was. They were down 8, I believe is what it was. So they're in that situation, and Chuba Hubbard just goes to the wrong side in his pass pro and allows a free rusher to hit Bryce Young almost immediately. So there are, I think, a lot of parts. Ike Ekwonu on the last play, I mean, just absolutely gets beat at left tackle, and it's 4th and goal from like the 25-yard line, and Bryce Young's barely got time to throw. So Bryce Young he's not in a good position. The Panthers are not in a position to succeed offensively at the very least. And it's tough because you look at CJ Stroud and how good CJ Stroud looks.
You're in my brain. Richardson at times too. And look, that's where I planted my flag and look, it's different because each team's infrastructure is different, but it really doesn't have to do with Bryce Young. I still think he could have success. We're talking about a 4-game sample size here, 3-game really, because he's injured.
Also, like Like,
The size concerns are real, though, and that you're seeing why.
Andy Dalton put up numbers, like, in terms of, like, throwing a lot of footballs and everything against the Seahawks, but, like, let's not act like he was, like, the second coming of Cam Newton's MVP season or something like that. Like, that's not
I'm with you. I'm with you there. It's also, I go back to, and I understand you have deficit, and the clock is then your enemy. He's not your friend. Why is Andy Dalton throwing the ball almost 60 times? So it goes back to offensive strategy is like, what's your offensive identity of what you're trying to establish and accomplish to have success?
Yeah.
Does that all fall on Bryce Young? The answer is no. But we look at the schedule too. It's not getting any easier. Lions, Dolphins, Texans. I do like to see the two rookies matched up. Colts, another rookie quarterback matchup. Bears on November 9th is potentially, when we're talking about the Panthers' first win, maybe they can squeak one out against those other teams. But they're going to be underdogs in all of those games, Lewis.
Yeah. Well, and like Miles Sanders was beat up, and we know that wide receiver core is not great already. And once again, I don't think Panthers fans want to hear it right now, but when you look at the rookie quarterbacks, like the infrastructure around Bryce Young is the worst of all of them. The Texans are in a better position and were in a better position. The Bears, that's Justin Fields in his third year now, never mind. The Colts were in that kind of situation. So long way to go. You want to see his continued growth and improvement, but you also, like you said, you want to see the training wheels come off a little bit and find that identity on offense. That's big.
And let's look at Stroud too, with the infrastructure. Injuries all along the Texans offensive line. Stroud hasn't thrown an interception through 4 games, not to give up a sack against the Pittsburgh Steelers and TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Again, that goes back to coaching, game planning, personnel, what your strategy is offensively. Yes, you credit CJ Stroud and what he's been able to accomplish. He's looked very good through 4 games, but I don't know, through the next 4 games, through the next 8 games throughout the season, it could seesaw a bit. And especially with young quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks particularly, it's not always linear growth of, he's better from week to week. So you certainly hope it looks better in the coming weeks, but the schedule is not getting any easier, Lewis.
Agreed.
All right. This has been another edition of WRAL Triangle and Two. Hopefully the listeners and the viewers enjoyed. Give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, also on the 99.9 Fan YouTube page. Go tap that subscribe button as well. Lewis, anything you need to plug with WRAL Sports Fan coverage this upcoming week?
Just keep watching. We'll have plenty of great stuff. Plenty of great stuff coming up. UNC and Syracuse on Saturday, NC State and Marshall on Saturday, Football Friday on Friday, extra effort awards, all that stuff. So just keep doing the thing. And hopefully some of these teams that are playing bad start figuring it out a little bit in the Triangle area.
Hey, we got UNC Sam Howell Thursday Night Football Commanders.
That's right. Yeah.
So got a lot. Keep it tuned to WRLSportsFan.com as well for all the best coverage. A big day here in the Triangle for sports. For Luis Fernandez, I'm Mark Bergin. Thanks for watching WRAL Triangle and Two. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.